Welcome everybody. My name is Steve Weitzman, and in my role as the director of the Herbert D. Katz Center for Advanced Judaic Studies, I want to thank you for joining us on this beautiful afternoon. We've undertaken this concert as a way to mark the 30th birthday of the Katz Center as a part of the University of Pennsylvania. But if you've been following the news lately, you'll understand that this is not the easiest time to be in a celebratory mood. Those of you who have attended a Jewish wedding or a Passover Seder know that there's always some sadness present even in the happiest moments of Jewish life. But the reverse is true as well. Jewish tradition has insisted that Jews must pause their grief and their fear to observe public occasions of celebration, precisely because joy is such an important part of life too. Music has always played an important role in mediating between those two extremes of sadness and joy. Music is always present in moments of Jewish happiness, on holidays like Passover and weddings and other celebrations, but it is also infused with many other emotions and experiences as well: suffering, dislocation, loss, and yearning. One of our goals today is to explore the role of music as part of the struggle for Jewish survival, a struggle that has always mixed together heartbreak and hope, affliction and redemption. But we're also here to celebrate something else, the 30th anniversary of the Katz Center as part of the University of Pennsylvania. Even within the Philadelphia Jewish community, I'm sorry to say, many have not heard about the Katz Center, but the truth is that it is one of the most vital places for Jewish scholarship and ideas in the world today. And this concert is our way of celebrating its contributions and expressing our appreciation to the people who've made the Katz Center possible. The center has been part of the School of Arts and Sciences at Penn since 1993, but its history goes back much earlier than that. It developed out of a once independent institution known as Dartmouth College, which was chartered in 1907. At the time of its founding, Dartmouth was a new kind of institution without precedent in the United States. There were Jewish seminaries in America by that point, but Dartmouth was meant to be a different kind of place, not a religious institution meant to train rabbis, but an academic institution empowered to support cutting-edge research and to make new discoveries about Jewish life, past and present. The founders of Dartmouth envisioned scholars as a resource that would help to vitalize Jewish life in America in the 20th century. In its heyday, Dartmouth drew some of the great Jewish scholars of the world to Philadelphia, the founders of academic Jewish studies in America. But in the second half of the 20th century, even as Jews began to gain greater acceptance in mainstream American society, Dartmouth began to struggle, and in order to survive, it had to adapt. The decision to merge Dartmouth into Penn was a key decision in that regard. And in the 30 years since then, the Katz Center, as the Dartmouth College came to be known, not only persisted, it has impacted Jewish studies on a global scale, supporting the research of more than 600 scholars from throughout North America, Israel, Europe, and elsewhere, revitalizing the Jewish Quarterly Review, the oldest English language journal of academic Jewish studies, and now as strong and innovative as ever, enabling the publication of untold numbers of scholarly books and articles, entering into scholarly collaborations with Jewish studies research institutions throughout America, Israel, and Europe, and expanding our understanding of Jewish history, literature, ideas, culture, and experience through innumerable discoveries. The Katz Center cannot take any credit for the music we will be hearing today, but the scholarship that was used to retrieve that music, to bring it back to life, as it were, is the kind of scholarship that the center aims to support. Scholarship that allows forgotten voices to be heard again and to revitalize Jewish culture. What we have in store for you today is a two-part concert featuring Jewish music originating in different parts of the Jewish world, regions of the world that happen to be in very difficult circumstances today, Ukraine on the one hand and Iran on the other. The first part of the concert will be focused on Jewish music from Ukraine, and the second part from the Islamic Persian context of Iran. I want to thank the American Philosophical Society, the nation's oldest learned society, for allowing us to hold this event on its premises, its wonderful premises. And I also want to thank the Katz Center staff for the incredible, heroic effort to make this event possible, and doing so in what has been an extraordinarily challenging year. It is now my pleasure to introduce the scholar who co-created the first part of our concert, Professor Anna Shternshis. Anna is the A.I. and Malka Green Professor in Yiddish Studies at the University of Toronto, Al and Malka Green Professor in Yiddish Studies at the University of Toronto, and Director of its Ann Tannenbaum Center for Jewish Studies. She was a Katz Fellow very early in her career in a year focused on Jewish studies and the arts, and she has since gone on to become a leading scholar of Russian and Soviet Jewish history, oral history, and Yiddish culture and music, generating research that has garnered many honors, including a Guggenheim Award. Anna is also an exceptionally generous intellectual citizen and leader in the field of Jewish studies who is active on many fronts. I myself have had the privilege to work with her on an effort she initiated to support Jewish studies scholars in Ukraine who are trying to carry on their work in the shadow of the war there. The reason we invited her here today, however, is because together with the artist Psoy Korolenko, who you'll be meeting in a moment as well, she has produced an album entitled Yiddish Glory that resurrects lost Yiddish songs from the time of the Nazis and the Stalin era. Voices that were completely silenced until the efforts of Anna and Psoy allowed them to be heard again. In 2019, the album was shortlisted for a Grammy in the category of world music, and I am thrilled that you get a chance to experience some of that music now in person. So without further ado, Anna.
Thank you, Professor Weitzman, for this wonderful introduction of myself, but especially of the Katz Center. My academic career started here 24 years ago, and I cannot be more grateful for everything I learned here from the space and from this community, and it's wonderful to be back here on the 30th anniversary to share this new research and scholarship. So our story begins about 27 years ago, when the librarians of the Ukrainian National Library, led by Lyudmila Sholokhova, who now works at YIVO, found dozens of unnamed boxes filled with handwritten Yiddish documents that looked something like this in the dark corner of the basement of that library located in the church. It turned out, after some time, that this was long presumed lost archive left behind by Soviet ethnomusicologist Moisei Beregovsky and his colleague Rovim Lerner, who was a linguist, who spent the entire World War II, and also some other colleagues of theirs, preserving Yiddish music, stories, and jokes from Jews living and dying in the Soviet Union, in ghettos, working in the home front, or serving in the Red Army. Of 6 million European Jews, 2.5 million were killed in the Soviet Union within the Soviet borders of 1941, and of them about 900,000 in Ukraine. The discovered archive revealed that more often than one would imagine, the last thing that the person did before they were killed was to write a song about what was going on with them. Many of these songs were created by women, some by children. Almost none of them were known, published, or survived in memory prior to this discovery. Beregovsky and Lerner planned to publish their findings in a book, but they were arrested before they had a chance to do so. In fact, this is the reason why the only photograph of Rovim Lerner that I have for you is this mug shot taken when he was arrested in 1951 by Stalin's government specifically for conducting this project. Both he and Beregovsky went to jail in accusations of promoting Jewish nationalism among Holocaust survivors of Ukraine. And how they promoted this because they asked them to sing Yiddish songs about their experiences. So today, our presentation tells stories of these people whose voices they preserved in 1947. And many of these songs will be performed for the first time in the United States since 1945. We will begin with this song called The Friendship of People. These are a little bit of Soviet titles. I hope you forgive Beregovsky for adjusting his project to Soviet realities in which he worked, which hasn't heard of academic freedom and things like this. But this specific song was recorded from a refugee from Riga, Latvia. His name was Chaim Kotler, and he himself was at that time in Cheboksary, in Chuvassia region of Ukraine. In Chuvassia region of the Soviet Union. Now, Chuvashia is a region of Ukraine, a region of the Soviet Union, actually located about 800 kilometers east of Ukraine, mostly populated by indigenous Chuvash, Russian indigenous population. And during the war, Chuvashia became home to a large number of Jewish refugees. Now, about 11% of Riga's population before the war was Jewish, and of them, very few survived the war, less than 0.5%. The only Riga Jews who managed to survive, though, those who escaped. Now, I have to give you a little bit of a timeline so that the song makes sense, and that is this. Riga, the Soviet Union was invaded by Germany on June 22nd, 1941. And on July 1st, on 1941, the German army entered Riga. But then on June 27th, 5 days after the invasion, but 3 days before the German army entered Riga, all Soviet officials, all Soviet institutions left town and tried to escape to the Soviet rear. About 10,000 Jews were able to run on foot. Some of the Soviet officials, some of them Jews, were evacuated more systematic way, but the majority of Jews just ran on foot. And then, this is a photograph of that, and on June 27th, as soon as the Soviet institutions left Riga, local population began attacking Jews. And tens of thousands of Jewish residents of Riga were murdered by their colleagues and neighbors in the nearby Rumbula forest. So June 27th is the day when they stopped being Riga residents and started being Jews who were targeted and killed by their former friends and colleagues. If you look up the history of Holocaust in Latvia, and specifically history of Holocaust in Riga, you will not find the date June 27. It's not as important as July 1st, for example, when German army invaded Riga. But for the person who wrote the song in Chuvashia, that day, June 27th, was the end of history as he knew it. And he also mentions a city called Ape. This is a photograph. The story with that, it's a small town, a little bit, about 20 miles from Riga. And for one day, on June 28th, it was taken back by the Red Army from the Germans so that they were able to pass through a few refugees. And the only Jews of Riga who actually survived that trip were those who left before June 27th, ended up in Ape for literally half a day, saved by teachers in school there, and then ended up going to Chuvashia or Uzbekistan or other regions of the Soviet Union. I'm telling you all this because this song documented this moment of history which was so central for Latvian refugees in Chuvashia and did not end up in history textbook. This is as if Chaim Kotler knew that if he doesn't compose a song about his experience, nobody will ever know what happened to Jews in Riga. So please welcome Psoy Korolenko with the American premiere of the song Friendship of People, written by Chaim Kotler in Chuvashia in 1941.
Jahr, dem 27. Jun, in Riga ist finster geworden die Sonn. Hitler, der Mörder von Völker, der Feind, abgelöst auf Riga, hat adetant. Gebrennt haben Gassen von der schönen Riga, gewalgert haben sich bald Massen Harigim. wir seinen entlaufen, nacket und bloß, gelost auf Hefker, unser Hobenhäus. Läden nicht jeden, haben uns auf die Wegen behalten von Säune und Essen gegeben. In der Schule in Stadt Apen haben wir geruht, die Lehrer von Schul haben uns verhüt. Kinchuwashi, Kinchubaksar seien mir gekommen, die Stadt hat uns freundlich hereingenommen. Geöffnet hat sie vor uns die Pläten von Essenwerk, von Speis, besondere Kleiden. Lichtig ist geworden vor uns die Welt, Arbeiten vor und Front haben wir sich gestellt. Arbeiten wollen wir Tag und Nacht, dass Hitler soll werden umgebracht. Abgemerkt soll werden wie am Molek, wir schweren Bavos, uns ist heilig. Bei unserer Armee, bei Stalin in dem Leben, wo's nur dank sei, seinen mir Leben geblieben.
About 1.4 million of Soviet Jews and another 200,000 Polish Jews survived the war in places like Chuvastia, Kazakhstan, and other countries of Central Asia, also parts of Siberia and Ural Mountains. They were the luckiest ones of European Jews. About 3 million of other Soviet Jews, also Polish and Romanian Jews who ended up within Soviet borders of 1941, usually were murdered within 5 to 10 miles away from their houses. For example, in Riga, where Kotler escaped, there were almost no survivors. And a few days later, almost the entire Jewish community was destroyed. Now, parts of the Soviet Union, about 800 miles south of Riga, were delegated for the occupation to the Romanian authorities. This is the area between the rivers Bug and Dniester, the contemporary Ukraine and Moldova, and this is where about 150,000 Romanian Jews from Bessarabia, northern Bukovina, and Bukovina were deported or run to from where they lived. Many of them died during those deportations, and together with local Jews, about 250,000, between 250 and 300,000 were killed there in Transnistria during the occupation, and another 130 to 150,000 survived. This is a photograph from deportation. One of the scariest places in Transnistria was a camp named Pechora, located in the town with the same name in Vinnytsia region of Ukraine. Romanians occupied that town sometime at the end of July of 1941, and in September 1941 they created a camp there. So historians still argue, was it the camp, was it the ghetto, in September 1941, and they converted this beautiful Pototsky state park, former sanatorium for Red Army soldiers in the Soviet Union, into what prisoners called the death camp. The prisoners actually called it death loop. And the reason for that was that Pechora was located in between those two rivers. You see it on the screen, and it was really hard to escape. So what happened there, they rounded up people from nearby ghettos of Transnistria, Bershet, Tulchin, Bratslav, and others, sent them to Pechora, waited for 2-3 weeks until people died there from starvation, and then sent new prisoners. About 30,000 people died in Pechora between 1941 and 1943. There are no photos of Pechora from the time of the war, and there are very few now. In fact, the photos, those beautiful photos I'm showing you now, I found them on TripAdvisor because they still advertised, well, until 2 years ago, advertised Pechora as a site for beautiful climate, very nice combination of trees and 2 rivers and all that. So now it's back to being a sanatorium, a spa even. So not to upset vacationers too much, they put this plug at the gate, a little bit to the side, saying that during the war this was the site of a death camp. Now, the only people who had some chance of surviving Pechora were kids who were small enough to go through the fences of that camp and get some water and maybe beg a little bit in the nearby villages. But their parents were much more likely to die from starvation and then also from typhus. Cannibalism was one of their biggest problems there. And the reason why Pechora was completely not studied enough and really not very well known in the Soviet Union was because all the guards and everyone who worked there was recruited from the local population. There were no Romanians there, no Germans. It was all fully locally run. So it was very controversial to talk about this in the Soviet Union, and in the post-Soviet time, people more or less forgot about the existence of that camp. One of the prisoners there was a teenager named Yosef Broverman. He was 12 in 1942, 15 when Beregovsky met him and interviewed him, recorded that song. Yosef Broverman came from Tulchin, another small town in Vinnytsia region of Ukraine. I put it on a picture for you. Look at this castle, looks like a Buckingham Palace, I don't know. Hard to think of those Ukrainian small towns as homes to this kind of architecture, but Yosef Broverman wrote the song that you're about to hear when both of his parents died from typhus in Pechora, and he wanted to commemorate them and also the beautiful town where he came from. Almost all Jews of Tulchin were deported to Pechora and died there. Before the war, there were 4,000 local Jewish residents of Tulchin. Of them, only 20 survived. Now, please welcome back Psoy with the performance of Tulchin.
Kommt Chotscheinu nach der Monne, unser früher dicke Zeit, unser Masel, unser Leben, was hat uns amol gescheit, unser Moke, unser Weinen, ona Schir und ona Neck, oi oi meine junge Jorn gehen jetzt beim Deutsch weg. Nur herum die junge Bäume wachsen, Zweigen werden grün. Und einmal also gezwittet unser Leben in Tulchin. Die Zeit und von die Bäumer flieht der schöner Zwitter rup. Punkt also das Licht die Kleben, geht bei uns a Zwitte ab. Wo du stehst nicht, wo du gehst nicht, gäumen Menschen auf den Weg. Es wird noch scheinen unser Leben wie in die friedliche Tag. Oi, die Ellen, die Säumen blanchen sich allein herum. Und was blutig wird gestorben, wo du kommst, die Summe tun. Menschen fallen wie die Fliegen ganze Welt. Kein Mal soll nicht sein verfallen, das unschuldig Jiddisch blit, was wird dort sind vergessen in Europa beim Bandit. Nur derweil se gäumen Menschen in Petschere auf den Weg. Oi, lass uns scheinen das Licht die Kleben von die friedige Tag.
Broverman's parents died from typhus, and typhus was one of the largest killers in Transnistria. When pandemics struck ghettos, Romanian authorities threatened to kill all their residents just to prevent the spread. Therefore, ghetto doctors were under a huge pressure to keep people safe. And it was especially hard because they didn't have any medication or equipment. Sometimes they set up isolation wards, public toilets, bathhouses, and in one ghetto, Shargorod ghetto, somebody came up with a brilliant idea to start a soap-making factory, and that was once they started producing the soap and using it and also selling it or giving it to nearby villages, typhus spread slowed down. But unfortunately, during fighting the pandemic in ghettos, a lot of doctors died. About 80% of physicians in the Shargorod ghetto and the other ghettos of Transnistria died while doing their job taking care of patients sick with typhus. So our next song is talking about the enemy that is not Nazis, not even Romanian guards, but a thing that spreads the diseases, a typhus louse. It is a humorous song, and before you ask, about 25 to 30% of songs from ghettos in Yiddish are humorous songs, laughing at all sorts of things, but you'll see one of them now. So this is a humorous song sang from the point of view of a typhus louse, and a typhus louse is afraid of only two things, of only one thing, of doctors, brave and competent doctors that will kill it. And it came to us with the tune, you see it on the screen, the tune that is a child who sang it for Beregovsky used, this Lance Vinokur, a student of grade 6 in 1945. The tune comes from a Polish composer, David Begelman, who himself actually died in Auschwitz in 1945, but his tunes were very popular in ghetto, and maybe you will recognize it now that you will hear it. And the words of that song were written by Reli Bly, a teacher who was imprisoned in Mogilov-Podolsky ghetto. I'll tell you a little bit more about her. And she created a lot of poems and songs that entertained and gave comfort and made kids like Lance Vinokur laugh in conditions of Transnistria in 1942. So here it is, as I'm a typhus louse.
Bin ich mir a typhus lois, geh ich mir viel lois zu Haus, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Wie ich komm nur dort zu gehen, ich schon bach Quarantäne, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Wie ich komm nur dort zu gehen, ich schon bach Quarantäne, tra-la-la-la-la-la. 3 Jahre gehen dich Zeit, fühl ich mir schön alt und schwach. Tra-la-la-la-la-la. Nur der Remes von der teure Farndochter, ob ach moire, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Nur der Remes von der teure Farndochter, ob ach moire, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Nur der Remes von der teure Farn Deutsch, ob ich moire, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Farn Deutsch, oi dem Ratzeich, mit die Kosaken, mit die Reich, tra-la-la-la-la-la. waren Deutsch, euch dem Ratzeich, mit den Kosaken, mit der Reich, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Nur Blitzen lust man aus Hashem, als man schickt auch Gura heim, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Nu voert ze mir weg von Dollen, ich will mich nehmen zu der Sonne, tra-la-la-la-la. Voert ze mir gesinnt von Dollen, ich will mich nehmen zu der Sonne, tra-la-la-la-la-la.
Now, most of the songs that Beregovsky and Lerner and other colleagues collected were collected between 1944 and 1947 when he traveled to recently liberated Ukraine. For example, they went to Chernovitz in 1945. And their goal was not specifically look for children and record their music. They were actually hoping to meet some adults. But adults were terrified of singing to them or talking to them because as soon as the Red Army liberated parts of Ukraine, parts of the Soviet Union, Holocaust survivors were being increasingly interrogated and arrested by Soviet authorities for more or less surviving. The idea was that, Soviet idea was that if a Jewish person survived the German or Romanian occupation, it must have been because they collaborated with the German government to the extent that their life was spared. So people who barely made it through that brutal occupation for diseases, losing up to 100 family members during those years, were now subjected to new dangers. So many of them lied about where they were during the war. They said, we lost the documents, we were evacuated, served in the army and all this. So Beregovsky was getting nowhere with his project for months until somebody gave him an idea, why don't you go and interview kids in schools? So kids who survived these Transnistrian ghettos were students, and their parents told them, if somebody asks you where you were during the war, you tell them that you were in Tashkent or somewhere else in Uzbekistan. And at first, Beregovsky would say, Moishe, where were you? I was in Tashkent, Moishe would say. Do you know any songs in Yiddish? Vada, of course, Moishe would say, and produce a number of songs that, Beregovsky recorded. And then he would say, oh, this is beautiful. Where did you hear this song? And Moishe would say, where did I hear it? I heard it in Pechora. I heard it in Bershet Ghetto. And this is how more than half of songs preserved by Beregovsky for us were written down through those children. And in addition to just recording their music, Beregovsky would often ask them to write the words of the songs by hand to make sure that he got all the words right. So in addition to his notes, we also have notes like you see on the screen right now, handwritten, you see, by a child on a school notebook, full words of the song that Beregovsky later recorded them sing. So this particular song that we will perform for you next, it's a lullaby called Machines Are Running, and he recorded it from this student, Ruth Uplanger, in Chernovitz. She survived the war in Mogilov-Podolsky ghetto in Ukraine, was a transit point from where they often sent people to Pechora. About 20,000 Jews went through this, and I want to say 75% of them died there from starvation and diseases. And that particular song was so popular that he recorded it from at least 7 other children. And how we know this, if you look at the screen, you see at the very top left, there's a number that says B229. That's just indicated the unique number of the archive. And then on the same page, a little bit more to that other side, you see other numbers. So each number, 2103, 2169, and all these are unique children that sang that very song for Beregovsky. And the reason I'm giving you this nitty-gritty close reading of an archival Yiddish document is because when Beregovsky was arrested and the place where he worked was shut down, Soviet officials grabbed all the papers and threw them on the street or piled them together in folders, whatever they could. So when the librarians found the documents, they were all mixed together. So only because we have those numbers on each of those pages, we're actually able to reconstruct where the beginning of each song is, where the end is, and where the middle, and also how many kids sang it. He never managed to finish the project. So all this to say that this song you're about to hear now is a lullaby that was one of the most popular ones that circulated in Mogilov-Podolsky ghetto. It was written by that same author who we talked about earlier, Relly Bly. This is her photograph. She was a prisoner in Mogilov-Podolsky ghetto, where she ended up with her son. She was then 30 years old, and her son was 2. And the lullaby you're about to hear, there's nothing soothing about this, but we think that she sang it to her son. And what the lullaby is talking about is the process of deportation, the march when 150,000 Romanian Jews had to walk on foot and ended up in places like Mogilov-Podolsky and Bershet ghetto. The march itself lasted months. It also took place during the coldest winter in European history, 1941 to 42. And the majority of older people did not make it for the march. And some historians now say that actually no child under the age of 5 was able to survive that march. So they all died because there was no food, strenuous walking, and cold and all this. So the fact that Relly Bly had a child means that she was pregnant during this march, gave birth in ghetto, and managed to keep that son and sang that song for him. So here it is for you, Transnistrian Lullaby, Machines Are Running, performed by Psoy for us.
Mir verjuckte sitzen drinnen, man schickt ins Zebug. Mir verjuckte sitzen drinnen, schickt man ins Zebug. Dorten winkelt der breiter Dniester, schick agris mir zu. Fin mein Momen in mein Schwester, wo sonnen du, schein du. Fin mein Momen in mein Schwester, wo sonnen du, schein du. In dort huben mir gefunden, hingeneut. In der schöner Ukraine, jetzt regiert der Teut. In der schöner Ukraine, jetzt regiert der Teut. Tiefus und Hingerkelten, Toi das auch gebracht. Toi da so viel bringen, selten kenn mehr größter Schlacht. Toi da so viel bringen, selten kenn mehr größter Schlacht. Keiver, kein Matzeve, is fahrens nicht du. In a Sommen Reva großen legt man ins Zeru. In a Sommen Reva großen legt man ins Zeru. Doch der Sturm dort nicht bei bekannten Wetterkrieg. Wieder wird die Sinn ins scheinen, unser ist der Sieg. Wieder wird die Sonne scheinen, unser ist der Sieg. Und dann kommen wir befreite in der Roter Heim. Los die Teute, bade Teute, wer das Leben sein schein. Los die Teute, bade Teute, wieder wer das Leben sein schein.
Rayleigh Blythe's husband, Ephraim Blythe, when she was in the ghetto, served in the Red Army. About 440,000 Jews served in the Red Army, and Jews were the only group of the Soviet population for whom it was safer actually to serve in the army during the war than to stay under the occupation, because about 300,000 of them survived, and the survival rate in Ukraine was much lower. Red Army soldiers and officers were the first ones to encounter the aftermath of the Holocaust in Ukraine. The Red Army was the one that liberated Treblinka and Auschwitz, ghetto of Budapest, Theresienstadt, and other sites of Jewish death. And Soviet Jews serving in the Red Army became the first Jews fully aware of the scope of destruction of Jewish communities in Europe. So our next song was recorded from one such soldier who was wounded and was recuperating in a hospital in 1943. We don't know exactly where. And he wrote a song about his experiences serving in the Red Army.
Oi, was ich mourne ein den Wald, was neugen sich die Zweigen, was neugen sich die Zweigen, wo schummen nie die Fegerlach, sie nuren sich und schweigen, wo schummen nie die Fegerlach, sie nuren sich und schweigen. Bam Weg unter a Bergele, arum a dem Panalten, is in a frischen Käfer dort, a junger Held behalten. Is in a frischen Käfer dort, a junger Held behalten. Wenn wir oben dem wüsten Feind von unser Land getrieben, von unser Land getrieben, ist verteilt auf sein Post in Feuer stehen geblieben. Ist verteilt auf sein Post in Feuer stehen geblieben. A böse Keul hat ihm das Herz ob zweien scheun zerrissen. Und verteut hat versorgt, mein Mutter geht zu wissen. Und verteut hat versorgt, mein Mutter geht zu wissen. O Mame, da nicht wein auf meine junge Jorn, auf meine junge Jorn. Ich hab sie nicht verspielt, sie ist nicht gern verloren. Ich hab sie nicht verspielt, sie ist nicht gern verloren. Der Hitler mit die Blutzappers, Assamis fahren Menschen. Und wer es tut, sie euch rotten, sein Namen wird man benchen. Und wer es tut, sie euch rotten, sein Namen wird man benchen.
Now I want to bring us back to where we started, the Soviet Central Asia, and talk about Almaty and Kazakhstan specifically. Kazakhstan became home to about 386,000 Jewish refugees between 1941 and 42. Some of them were Polish Jews who ended up there by accident between 1939 and 41. Some of them were deported by the Soviet government to jails. This business leaders, religious leaders, Soviets were suspicious of their loyalty to the Soviet regime and decided to deport them and put them to jail during this time. And of Polish Jews who survived the war, about 3.3 million lived in Poland before 1939. Of them, about 300,000 survived the war, and of those, 250,000 survived in the Soviet Union, saved by this deportation. And also Kazakhstan and other parts of Central Asia became home to Soviet Jews who were either refugees or evacuated there by the Soviet government. So a lot of people were first in jail in 1939-40 and then released in 1941. And Kazakhstan became the center of huge Yiddish and Jewish culture during World War II. So one story I want to tell you about is the story of Yaakov Merzon. I wish I could show a picture of him. I will just show you photos of maybe refugees in Almaty. But Yaakov Merzon was a rabbi first and then became a school teacher in Ukraine, Kryvyi Rog. And in 1932, he was arrested by Stalin's government for running an underground Jewish day school. He was sent to jail, which most jails were located in Kazakhstan. And in 1945, he was released from that jail on compassionate grounds. Why? He was sick with tuberculosis. He lost most of his teeth. He was coughing blood, so they let him out. So to support himself, he was begging on the streets of Almaty. And as he was begging, kids were making fun of him. He looked really scary. They were throwing dirt at him, rocks at him, making fun of him. And at some point, he started cursing those kids or yelling at them in Hebrew. So kids reported the incident to their parents, and the parents went to see who is the person who is yelling in Almaty at their kids in Hebrew. Found out who he was and hired him for a piece of bread to teach those kids a little manners, maybe, I don't know, but teach those kids to read in Hebrew, to a little aleph base. And this Yaakov Merzon was teaching these kids. He had a notebook where he was writing down jokes and songs that those kids were singing among themselves. And these are the pages of that notebook. In May 1945, when the war was over, he mailed that notebook to Moisei Beregovsky because he heard that he was collecting Yiddish folklore of World War II. And in September of 1945, Merzon died, not knowing what happened to that notebook. And because he did this, this notebook is the only source we have today of Yiddish voices of Jewish refugees who survived the war in Kazakhstan, and the only collection of Yiddish songs. Now, because Merzon did not know who he was afraid of more, of Hitler, that was really far away, killing Jews there, or of Stalin, who put him to jail and was surveying all this life in Kazakhstan, he did not write down a single name of a single child who sang those songs. They're all written as anonymous. But nevertheless, because of him, we can now hear what entertained those kids. And almost all the songs he wrote down from those kids were humorous or satirical. So the one you're about to hear next is called Purim Gifts for Hitler, one of those satirical songs. And it, in some ways became relevant, it remains relevant because it talks about political leaders that are dreaming to destroy Jewish people and also about resistance of Jews to give in to that intention of destructing them. So here it is, Purim Gifts for Hitler.
Du bist nicht mein erster Sohn, ich hab gehört, dass ich will noch verschreiben, euch dein Namen, in dem Zettel, wo sebt sich mit Omen, Omen, Antiochus, Turkwemade, Kruschewan, oben die Welt verkippt, früher noch vor dir, a langer Zettel, Omen, sie ist voran, es wird nicht stehen, kein Papier. Hat ihr alle sich hat Ziel gestellt, mich hab zum Mecken von der Welt, nur nicht danach ist es gewählt. Unser Kass wird kurz nach die Hand. Mein Friedler, heus hast du verbrennt, hast du meine Töchter geschenkt, hast du meine Eifelig zertraten und geschworen, mich heus zu roboten. Mar wild und narrisch ist dein Beiser Träum, mir wollen leben, sei wie sei, dann soffet sei nach Homens Bäum, Homes rohen
In 1949, the department with the Ukrainian Academy of Science where Beregovsky worked was shut down. It was called the Cabinet for Jewish Culture. In 1950, Beregovsky lost his job. He worked as a choir manager at the beer factory in Ukraine. But then in 1950, he was arrested and sent to jail and was only released in 1956. This is the last photograph of him with his family. He died in 1960 thinking that his work that he has done during the war has been lost forever. In fact, this is what the investigators told him during the interrogations, that they destroyed all these materials. Like biblical Moses, he never got to see the promised land. He never got to see those songs being performed on stage, let alone across the globe from his native Ukraine. Today, we wanted to thank him and praise his heroic efforts and efforts of his colleagues that preserved the voices of people singing for the darkest chapter of modern Jewish history. Yes, it is 75 years after the archive was closed, but the songs did see the light of day, ended up at the Katz Center, and we would like to thank the Katz Center, the faculty, staff, Professor Steve Weitzman, and Albert, Anna Walters for both bringing us here and making this event possible and managing it so beautifully. And above all, I wanted to thank you, our audience, who chose to spend this afternoon listening to this music and fulfilling the dreams of people who used to sing to document their difficult history for us. I'm sure that this is exactly what they would have wanted. We will conclude with a song that Beregovsky recorded in a DP camp in Germany. He was allowed to go there for 2 weeks. It's not exactly strictly Soviet material, but it symbolizes in so many ways return to normalcy, when Jews stop making fun of their enemies and instead start making fun of each other. So this is the song that ridicules all these aid organizations, Jewish aid organizations that came to help DP camp survivors and to help them settle. So Psoy Korolenko, maybe clap for him. Final song. Thank you so much.
Angekommen kein Berlin, nicht daher und nicht dahin. Und me fort, und me sitzt nach ob ein Ort. Me läuft zum Joint, me läuft zum Reben, kann sich nicht kein Nein zu geben. Sagen wie es lieber auf, was wird sein mit uns der Sof? Lieber Bruder, nur betochen, mir zerschäm noch a paar Wochen, wirst du sein ob jener Zeit, Und von dort ist schon alright. Und im Joy der Staripios, geht uns nicht kein entfernen Vapros. Me sucht ihm in sa Sachen weh und meint als es ist okay. Sorg nicht, sie ist noch gut. Was du a Bocher von Sachnut. Ist nur a Chwatker Jad, gibt a Zertifikat. Noch a Regen scheint die Sonne, weißen mir schon lang davon. Verliert man Tage nie den Mut, abi mit Jekes ist kaputt, abi Berlin ist stark zerstört, liegt nein Neilen in der Erde und ich ist Ruhe, Tanz und Schrei, heure Israel chai. Lang wollt noch geben mein Lied, nur ich bin schon etwas mit. Es wird sein, da jenu dai. Hitras, adieu, goodbye.
Psoy Korolenko.
Professor Anna Shternshis.
Thank you. So we have some CDs, Yiddish Glory. It has some of the songs and also the story. I'm going to put them on the table. You can purchase them if you want. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, we're about to get going. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Natalie Dorman. I'm the Associate Director of the Katz Center, and I'm delighted to introduce Act 2 of our 30th birthday celebration in music. You have a lot to look forward to in this next set, but before we get to Galit Dardashti and her extraordinary band, I want to read a letter sent from Penn's president that he wanted to have read at this event. So indulge me, please. Dear friends, it is my great pleasure to congratulate the Herbert D. Katz Center for Advanced Judaic Studies on 30 remarkable years. I could not miss an opportunity to share how important the Katz Center is to our university's mission and to applaud its many, many achievements. This milestone is not only of great significance to the Katz Center and the study of Jewish civilization as a whole, but also to Penn and the values we hold most dear. As a leader in research and home to both the highly regarded Jewish Quarterly Review and one of the world's most impressive collections of Judaica, the center stands at the pinnacle of scholarly excellence. It has reached across the divides of discipline and geography by welcoming preeminent fellows from all corners of the globe to Philadelphia. And through expansive online programming, an advanced summer school for graduate students, and collaboration with other research centers and institutions within and beyond Penn, the center deepens connections throughout the world. There is indeed much to celebrate and still much work to be done. The Katz Center's exemplary commitment to critical thinking, thoughtful engagement, and productive dialogue has powerfully driven its mission for decades. This commitment, along with the dedication of the center's advisors, faculty, staff, and generous supporters, has meant so much to the university and to me, and will continue to be invaluable as we strive tirelessly to combat anti-Semitism and hate. The Katz Center community has always stood at the forefront of helping us understand and constructively respond to our present challenges, and I'm deeply grateful for the programs and leadership I've experienced firsthand. By broadening our understanding of Jewish history, culture, and thought, the Katz Center has helped illuminate the past to better inform the present and our future. Today, we reflect on the center's rich history and champion essential new scholarship and civil discourse. As a healer myself, I profoundly admire Tikkun Olam. With resilience, optimism, and excellence, I know the Katz Center will continue to fulfill Penn's great purpose to advance knowledge for the good of humanity. My heartiest congratulations again on 30 years strong, and I look forward to furthering important work together. Sincerely, J. Larry Jameson. Thank you, President Jameson. We're grateful to the President for recognizing the Katz Center as a citadel to scholarship. And it is fitting that the next performer is herself a scholar musician. As you will see in her approach to the Mizrahi Jewish musical heritage, she studies, preserves, and performs. We are very excited to share Katz Center fellow Galit Dardashti's project, Monajat, which translates as intimate prayer in Persian. The project is inspired by archival recordings of the Jewish prayers of Slichot chanted by Galit's late grandfather, Yunus Dardashti, a famous, renowned master singer of Persian classical music in Iran in the 50s and 60s. He was widely known as the Nightingale of Iran. In Monajat, Galit reinvents the ritual Slichot, poetry sung nightly preceding the Jewish New Year, by live singing combined with remixed samples of her grandfather's legacy recordings. Riffing off these old tapes, Galit composes a soundscape of original music performed by this acclaimed ensemble of musicians. And read the bios of her band members in your program and just be amazed. The album of the same name, Monajat, came out in September and was recently granted a Global Music Award. Monajat is both deeply Jewish and deeply Persian, a pairing we deeply need at this very fraught time. If your appetite for Galit is whetted by her music and story, and I'm confident it will be, then I urge you all to check out her fantastic documentary podcast series that she produced with her sister, Danielle, about the Nightingale of Iran, which was recently released and is already chart-topping on Apple Podcasts. But that's just a little plug and an aside. Please join me in warmly welcoming Galit Dardashti and her band.
Thank you so much. Can we get the house lights off, please? Thank you so much. So, according to tradition, the days leading up to the Jewish New Year are a time of deep reflection and spiritual preparation. The ritual of slichot, a late night service of sung liturgical poems, is supposed to sort of help get us in the mood for this time of introspection. My grandfather, Yunus Dardashti, Saba, as I called him, was one of the most renowned singers of Persian classical music in Iran in the 1950s and 1960s. He sang at the Shah's palace, he sang at concert halls throughout Iran, and he had a weekly spot on the radio before there was television. But he was also Jewish, and so he was often asked by members of his community to lead them in song on the Jewish holidays. Yet one of the only recordings of my grandfather singing in Hebrew are these amazing recordings of him singing the prayers of Slichot with his pleading and passionate voice. And it is a true honor to get to sing with him tonight, and hopefully you will join with us on some of the pieces. Some of us know of Slichot as a very late-night service on one Saturday night preceding the Jewish New Year. In Middle Eastern and North African Jewish practice, these poetic prayers of supplication or Slichot are chanted every day for an entire month preceding the Jewish New Year, sometime between midnight and dawn. In Tehran, these prayers were often chanted outdoors at people's homes and their courtyards, and many Persians, both Muslims and Jews, have powerful memories of hearing my Saba chanting in the streets of Tehran. In my family's Persian tradition, Jews gathered around 4 a.m. and chanted these prayers until sunrise. Around the same time that Muslims arose to say the early morning prayers. My father remembers hearing the sounds of the Muslim call to prayer wafting from the mosques as they chanted their own prayers of Slichot.
شور دارخی گواهخ وروץ לעבוד צור קדם מלכן בם ונקרא ללוך מלכן ידם ונקרא ללוך הקץ לראות שמר את מעשה אצבעותיו והבט אוהלי מרומיו וכוכבים חותמיו פיתוחי טובותיו ותיאכל את ישועותיו So unlike the Jewish New Year, which approaches the fall harvest, the Persian New Year, Nowruz, celebrates the birth of spring. But just as in the Jewish tradition, Nowruz, which we just celebrated, offers all of the promise that the new season brings for renewal, for rebirth, for a fresh start. I know I'm not alone in praying that this fresh start, this reboot, comes soon. This next piece brings these hopeful themes from the Persian New Year into the Jewish New Year ritual. זמן הקוד כצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשיו ורכבו זמן הקוד כצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשיו ורכבו זמן הקוד כצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשיו ורכבו זמן הקוד כצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשיו ורכבו זמן הקוד כצל ברח וגשמו כבר חלף ופרשיו vor Ketzel Arach Bekishmo Kvar Chalaf Ufer Ashav Verichbo garment will wear out, and the heavens like smoke shall be dispersed. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Adonai, Oh, wait, we need the light back on for 1 second. So when my Saba led Slichot services, first in Iran and then later in Israel, it was his unique ritual to end with a powerful piece. He chanted not in Hebrew, but in Persian, just as the sun was rising. The Persian poem called Monajat, which translates as intimate prayer, was written in the style of Sufi Persian poets like Hafez and Rumi, whom my grandfather interpreted as a professional singer. But this Persian poem was most likely written by my Saba as his own artistic innovation to the Hebrew prayers of Slichot, and his artistry really inspired me to create this project. His poem encourages listeners to shake off their morning slumber and worship God. But whether he was singing in Hebrew or in Persian, Iranians of all faiths relished listening to him chant, as he does so beautifully here in Monajat. El nora lila, c'est la numérila, bichette neila. El nora lila, c'est la numérila, bichette neila. El nora lila, c'est la numérila, bichette neila. Metem nizbarkeru im lechaim nosim umetzal hands so much.
One, two, three.
Thank you.
One more.
One, two, three.
Got a shiny sheet here, man. She's a fright.
Thank you so much.